Hi friends, we're here to talk again about Infinite Jest. We're up to page 500. The problem, I think, has become pretty clear to us as readers. There's this cartridge, this entertainment cartridge that kills people who watch it. And it's being used as a political weapon. Well, you had an interesting thought about that Neil Postman book, so why don't you pick it up?
Oh, yeah. So Neil Postman has a book from 1984, so that would be very much in David Foster Wallace's library, called Amusing Ourselves to Death. And it grows out of a lecture that he gave where he said that the real dystopian book is not George Orwell's, but it's Aldous Huxley's. And that's a world based not on sort of destruction by government oppression, but destruction by pleasure seeking.
Which is what's happening in this book. Okay, so that was an interesting connection, and we can see the problem manifesting itself through the addictions of the people in recovery at Ennet House, but also through the obsessive tennis playing, maybe, of the kids who are also doing drugs at the same time.
Right.
And I think we've established that all of us reading together suspect that the cartridge in question is one of Hal's father's movies, unreleased movie. Okay, so there's this problem, but it's not unsolvable. In fact, there's a sense of hope, maybe, if you look at how AA is being
I think
the story.
It's kind of interesting because this is Hal's story, which I think you're going to talk about a little bit. But but the character I really find compelling is Gately, and we're really getting this really extended, nuanced portrayal of him, and there must be some reason for it. His development within AA has been the focus of his story in the past 100 pages. And part of what I think it really comes down to for him in these pages is to stop thinking and just trust the program. So whether it's dealing with how to deal with the cravings or how to develop a relationship with God, he just needs to follow the steps that are described, and eventually he'll be there.
Yeah. And then you were drawing a parallel between that and the kids who play tennis. It's the same kind of thing, the way they're being instructed. Just do it over and over and over again.
Right.
And then you'll just be able to do it. It'll work. I mean, there's this interesting passage there about what is God, and he's really struggling with AA says God can be whatever you want it to be, and he's like, I don't even know what to think about this. But yeah.
Right, and then he's talking with Pat, and it says on 466, Pat had said it didn't matter at this point what he thought or believed or even said. All that mattered was what he did. If he did the right things and kept doing them for long enough, what Gately thought and believed would magically change. So there's this sense, like with the tennis kids, about repetition bringing deep, true change.
And which then, I guess, offers hope for there's a way out of this, hypnotic attachment to pleasure through entertainment that's literally killing people in the novel. All is not lost. There appears to be a possible way out of that.
Yeah, and maybe this is partly why Steely and
Morat.
Why there's something kind of buffoonish about them, right? And maybe it's because they're spending all their time sort of intellectualizing this thing, and really it's just about action. Just do. Don't think so much, just do.
So you alluded a minute ago to the fact that I was saying it was Hal's story, and the reason is because something at some point in this 100-page chunk made me step back and say, I got to go back to the first chapter. And so what I was reminded of, well, first of all, there are a lot of references in the first chapter that we couldn't possibly have made any sense of at the time, but you can see a lot of stuff is packed in here. I had forgotten that this was in first person in Hal's voice, which is the only place where that happens. Then he becomes a third person character. And at the end of the first chapter, he's being interviewed for, I guess it's the University of Arizona tennis program as an incoming freshman. and he collapses. He's so stressed out or whatever. He collapses, and he's thinking already ahead to, but I have a tournament tomorrow, and here's who I'm going to play. Here's who's probably going to be in the lineup that I'm going to play. And at the end, someone, whether imagined or real, asks him, so yo then, man, what's your story? Which seems to then launch us into the novel. So I was thinking, oh, okay, so this is Hal's story. And in fact, I was really reminded after skimming through that first chapter again of the character Holden Caulfield. There seemed to be, I mean, it's not a perfect parallel, but I don't know, I just really felt like we were getting some Catcher in the Rye references here, or, I mean, and even their names are kind of similar. A few weeks ago we were talking about Hal, like, why is he named Hal? Is it Prince Hal? Is it Shakespeare? But I really am seeing Holden here, the kid who's kind of falling apart, and he's asking all these deep questions, and the world around him is so twisted, he can't really make sense of it. Right. And so I was saying it seems like Hal's story, and you were saying it seems maybe more like Gately's story to you. Another thing we wanted to talk about was something that actually happens in the novel right before this section that we read for this week. It's on page like around 398, where there's this thing called found drama. And at first I just thought it was a really funny joke making fun of avant-garde art. But it's a movie that James Incandenza did, where the movie turns out to be a movie of the audience watching a movie. The joke's total running time was just exactly as long as there was even one cross-legged patron left in the theater to watch his own huge projected image gazing back down at him with the special distaste of a disgusted and ripped-off feeling art film patron, which ended up being more than maybe 20 minutes, only when there were critics or film academics in the seats who studying themselves, taking notes with endless fascination, and finally left only when the espresso finally impelled them to the loo, at which point himself, James, and Mario would have to frantically pack up cameras and lens cases and so forth. Okay, the movie's called The Joke. The book is called Infinite Jest. You can't help but start to wonder whether the exact same joke is being played on us as readers, right? Like, how would you, okay, so that's how you would do it with a film. How would you do it with a book? And I think the thing that made me think that actually was not when I read that passage, but when I got to the Shaggy Dog story, around page 500, about James helping his parents move a bed, which goes on for literally over 10 pages for no apparent reason. Right. And I'm thinking, this whole novel is one big Shaggy Dog story. Like, here we are having this conversation about theme and what we think the problem is and the solution is and what we think of all the characters, and really maybe it's going to end up being one long Shaggy Dog story, and we are like those people in the theater, like, how long will the readers stick with it? Is the book even meant to be read all the way through? And then you were talking about John Cage. Right.
In the 1950s, his art piece called 4 minutes and 30 seconds, where he goes out on stage and prepares at the piano and prepares and prepares. And the music or the performance is actually the sound of the audience's discomfort or whatever noises they're making, and he just continually prepares, and then after about 4.5 minutes he gets up
and they all applaud
and they applaud right well, because it's either applaud or realize that you're a sucker.
I didn't get the impression from watching, you just showed me that on your phone a few minutes ago, I didn't get the impression from watching that the audience necessarily understood what had happened. I don't know. And like, I'm not sure I understand what's being done to me right now either. So I guess that's a good segue into some questions that I have about this book. I mean, in one sense, like, that's ingenious. If that's what he's doing, if this book is like one big joke on us, which actually makes perfect sense, it's ingenious. And we're not even supposed to read it all the way through, but we're extremely stubborn, and we're going to, because now we're more than halfway there. Right. But I am also questioning, first of all, like, at what point does the violence in this book become gratuitous? Is it bothering you?
Are you talking about like the assassins?
Yes, the assassins.
Right. I mean, because like
that was just so disturbing.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where I just sort of glaze over a little bit and sort of move through those passages and they're done. So yeah, I guess it is bothering me.
Yeah, because you're trying to avoid it.
Right. I just want to get to the other side of this.
So part of me feels like this is a deeply moral book. In those passages between Marath and Steepley, and then like what you're saying about there's a solution potentially being offered here, and it also seems like it might be an incredibly smart and ingenious and funny book where the joke is on us. But then there's stuff like the violence, and then we can actually leave a link in the comments below to something that our friend Susan sent us about the writer Mary Carr, who apparently was the inspiration for Joelle Van Dyne, who, by the way, still hasn't come back. So still also looking for some female characters. I think at this point I can probably give up on that. But David Foster Wallace apparently was stalking her and her family for a while, and that's also really concerning and weird. And so then, I guess I'm kind of torn between like, is this genius or is it just really aberrant behavior and writing? Like, what is it?
Right. Well, and another possibility that I thought about is there's so much language and so much prediction that's come true. Right? There are phrases that were very rare when this book was being written that are commonplace now. And there are cultural things like that. And today as I was reading, I was almost thinking, did he just get lucky in picking those things? It seems
it's got to
like
be more than
it's
luck.
more than that, right? So
extremely insightful.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm a little bit flustered and irritated and intrigued. I'm probably feeling all the things. I have probably been completely manipulated into feeling all of the things that I'm supposed to be feeling. Do you think he actually intended anybody to finish this?
I don't know. I mean, we paid $23 for this book, so
times 2.
Yeah.
So I mean, we have a financial commitment to finish it.
$50 or yeah.
Anyway, here we go. We keep going. We'll be back at page 600 or thereabouts. And in the meantime, I'll be back on Wednesday with another regular episode of Better Book Clubs.